Was it you who discovered them?
Um, yes and no. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, the stones existed before I came along.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is in a hotel lobby in my hometown of Cimarron, in the lobby of the St. James Hotel. The St. James Hotel is a very old hotel that goes
Mm-hmm.
back into the 1800s. Okay. Now, my wife and I, more in the past than now, made trips regularly to Cimarron to visit our family and our friends.
Mm-hmm.
On the occasion of my mother's 95th birthday, we were in Cimarron helping celebrate with the family, and we went to the St. James like we always do because that's where we stay in the hotel when we're in there. So we are out in the lobby enjoying coffee or something, and like I always do, I excused myself and I walked out into the lobby and into the hallway where there are lots of pictures and memorabilia
Mm-hmm.
about the early times of the hotel. I go there to see if there's anything new, okay? Because I've already written of just about everything that's there. So I made the loop, turned around, and started to walk back to where my wife was waiting. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this stone object sitting up against the back of a desk, like like out of the way so that it wouldn't fall, I guess. It
I
stood
feel
about
like
4 feet tall.
I feel
Pardon?
like I need to stay at St. James's Hotel.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. By all means. If you're ever in Cimarron, that is the place to stay. Okay. Uh, so I'm walking back. I see this stone image there, and I say, "What is that?" So I
Mm-hmm.
walked over to it and I looked at it. And when I saw the Templar cross on the front of it, and I saw other symbols clearly carved on it that were from the Middle East, because I had already studied all about the Middle East and the
Yes.
Jewish people and
Yes.
etc. I knew what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh, what is this doing here? So
That's not Spanish or Phoenician.
no, has nothing to do with that area. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to the receptionist desk, being careful not to touch anything, you know how that goes. So I asked the young lady, can you tell me what that stone object is over there? And she said, yes, that's a Santa Fe trail marker. Well, I almost burst out laughing because I knew that it wasn't that. But out of politeness, I didn't say anything to her. I
Mm-hmm.
said, thank you. Can I take a picture of it? And she said, sure, go ahead. So I did. Okay. And that was the beginning of the book of the Templars and the Mysterious Stones. Now, I took the liberty to take the pictures of all four sides of that stone and measure it and everything else that I could collect by way of information on a piece of
Mm-hmm.
paper. And of course, I couldn't wait to get home and start studying it and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what it was. Uh,
May I ask about the stone or stone pillar? How large is it? Is it more than 1 meter high?
well, a meter, let's just say, is 36 inches. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just say that, okay? Yeah, you guys talk meters and we talk inches. Uh,
I'm from Europe, so I'm on the metric system.
so the stone, look, I'm going to do something for our interview here.
Sure.
Hang on a second. I have obviously done this kind of interview many times, okay?
Oh, excellent,
Can
excellent.
you see this?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yes.
this picture is in my book,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one side of the stone as I saw it that very first day. Here is the stone, and it stands approximately 4 feet high.
Four
So it
feet. 4 feet.
approximately
Okay.
4 feet high. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
it's approximately 12 inches square on all four sides. There are four sides to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Each side has the Templar cross on it. Each side also has this round symbol, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which I have concluded is the Ra sun symbol, the Egyptian Ra sun symbol, or the all-seeing eye, or other. You see these pointed things here.
Mm-hmm.
These are on all four sides. I
Interesting.
contend that these are the parapets represented of King Solomon's temple. King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem had parapets on it like that on top, all the way around
Oh,
it. Okay?
amazing.
There are places on the stone on all
Mm-hmm.
four sides like this where they are laid out. And it appears to me that they were laid out that way for messages to be pecked into those areas.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that at one time there was something pecked in there, but over the years it has worn away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Got eroded. Mm-hmm.
Okay? Here is the famous Templar cross.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Okay? Unusual in that the top, the right, and the bottom legs are all one size, but the one on this side is short and square.
Mm.
Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Only they know. I see that the cross is resting on what appears to be a pedestal here. In doing my research, I have a good friend here in Albuquerque who is a Spanish rabbi and very knowledgeable of early
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew history. I took it and showed it to him. And he said, Lewis, he said, I can't make it out exactly, he said, but to me, he said, these look like early Hebrew symbols, but they're not very clear as to what they are. So I can't tell you exactly what it says. I can just tell you that it looks to me like early Hebrew scripture. Here is another space where something was carved and is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
Here at the bottom is what appears to be an eyeball inside of an eyelid. I don't know if you can see that.
Is it
It,
another all-seeing eye?
I don't know.
Mm.
I can't make it out enough, and I can't relate to anything that I know of. Okay? I know of the Ross symbol, but is this part of another symbol? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me say something about the entire stone at this point. You see the bottom of it
Mm-hmm.
appears to be rather flat, but it's actually not flat. It
Mm.
is at an angle. And it is my contention, and from what I know of it, is that this stone was standing somewhere buried up in the mountains where the other one is. And somebody tied a rope around it with the truck or something, pulled it, and
Oh.
it broke off. It broke off right there. So my big question has been all along, where is the rest of it
Mm-hmm.
buried up in the mountains? And what is on the rest of it? Are there symbols on the rest of it? I don't know because nobody knows where it is or where it
The
came from.
the person who transported this stone pillar, which looks a little bit like an obelisk, to be honest.
Yes,
The
yes,
person who transported this stone pillar to the hotel tied a rope around it and yanked it out of the ground.
yes. The story goes that in 1986, a fellow from Texas who was up in the area hunting that was familiar with that area.
Mm-hmm.
He showed up. He showed up in Cimarron with this stone, as you see it, laying in the back of his truck. And he claimed that he had found it up there. And he was taking it home to Texas to have as a souvenir out on his lawn. Okay. Fortunately, he showed it to a local man in Cimarron, who happened to be a very prominent rancher. And when the rancher saw what he had there, he told him, "No way are you taking this with you anywhere." And he
Good,
took it away from him. Okay.
good, good.
And he kept it in his home for several years. His wife did research on it and couldn't
Mm-hmm.
arrive at anything. And they eventually sold their large ranch and moved
Mm-hmm.
from Cimarron somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Before they left, they took the stone to the St. James Hotel to the then owner and offered to let him show it there in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand it, they did not give it to him, but they told him that he could use it, he could have it there for for guests and visitors to see.
Mm-hmm.
They left, never came back. The owner sold the hotel, and it has been sold several times since then.
Mm-hmm.
But every time that it has sold, the stone has stayed in the hotel as part of the property.
It
Okay?
was waiting for you.
I would like to think that. That would be nice. But like I said, one of my first huge question was, where's the rest of the stone? And how deep is it buried? And what is carved on it? That we won't know until somebody gets permission to dig it out, if they ever find it. Now, let me say at this point that
Mm-hmm.
the other stone, can you see this one?
Yes, I can.
The other stone is still standing up in the mountains in northern New Mexico. Okay? And when I first discovered the other one, I was interviewed by a local television station, KRQE TV 13.
Mm-hmm.
They interviewed me, and the interview went out. The next day, I got a call, a telephone call from Scott Walter of the
Really?
America Unearthed series.
Oh, that's amazing.
Scott called me and asked me several questions about it, and I described it as best I could to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Look," he said, "I'm working on my next series of episodes for
Mm-hmm.
our next viewing of America Unearthed." He said, "How about if I come out there and test it so that we can find out exactly what kind of stone it is?
Yes.
And by knowing that with his experience all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
he can actually tell me exactly where it was quarried, where it came from." And
Wow.
he told me that with his knowledge and experience, etc., like I said, he knows who the ancient stone carvers were who produced symbols and etchings on stone in other areas. He actually knows who they were by name at the time that they lived because they were so skilled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He told me if I can know what the stone type is exactly, where it came from, and about when it was done, and I'll know that, he said, by calculating how old it is, I can actually tell you who the man is that carved it. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh my God, would it be a Templar?" Big smile. Okay. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So unfortunately, Scott has been tied up.
Mm-hmm.
I first started doing this in 2013. It's now 2020. Okay.
Mm-hmm. 7
Scott
years ago.
still has not been able to get away to come and do the testing.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the reasons why. This stone that is still standing up in northern New Mexico is standing in a little cemetery. Okay. Because when the earliest people who saw it thought it was a gravestone,
Mm-hmm.
they started burying people around it. And today there are like 6 graves around it of people who their families thought that this was a headstone. It's not, but they thought it was. Okay, years went by, and the people that record cemeteries all over
Mm-hmm.
the country saw it standing in this little cemetery, and they said, "Oh my gosh, we better record this." So they recorded all of the stones because they have names and dates on them. This doesn't. So they recorded the names and graves of the graves that are there, and they recorded this stone and, hang on, hang on. Can you see this one?
Yes, can you raise it higher? Oh, perfect. Yes, I can see it. And
Can you see the cross etched in it?
yes, I can. And I have to tell you that it reminds me of a stone that we have in New Ross here in Nova Scotia. It has roughly the same shape, maybe even the same size, and the cross is so close, so similar.
And this cross appears to have been tinted green at one time, but the green has almost worn off, but
Mm-hmm.
you can see it. Okay?
So this stone and that stone pillar are in one
Close together.
location in the same cemetery.
They're in the same
Interesting.
cemetery, they're close together.
Hmm.
And hang on. Here is a third stone. Can you see this?
Yes.
A third stone that appears to be lava rock. It does not appear to be limestone. Okay? However, it is sitting close to these other two.
Hmm.
Okay? There is nothing etched on it that I can see anywhere. It's just a stone. But people have placed pieces of wood around it as if it's a grave site. You see that?
Hmm.
When
It
they
sounds
record,
like it sounds like the assumption is or was that all of these stones have to do with graves.
that is the assumption, okay?
Hmm.
And when they recorded them as graves in this cemetery, they actually gave them grave site numbers. So officially, they are categorizing them as graves, even though they're not, okay?
Hmm.
Now, one of the problems with wanting to do testing on these stones is that there are very rigid rules
Hmm.
against doing anything of a testing nature on anything that is classified as a gravestone, which these are.
Hmm.
In addition to that, that little graveyard is sitting in a national forest, the Carson National Forest, and they have very rigid rules around doing anything with a grave site. So, all of that to say that those are the things that I explained to Scott Walter that he would have to overcome if
Hmm.
he if he is able to come down and do the testing. And he said, "Well, I have experienced that myself in the past, and I know how to get permits approved for doing testing the way that I do testing." This is Scott Walter talking.
Hmm.
So he said, "It's just a matter of me trying to arrange my schedule so I can get down there and get that testing done. But in the meantime," he said, "I can tell you that you certainly have something there that is not recent and that is not done by anybody within the United States at any time."
It
So,
it doesn't look like anything that I have ever seen, the carvings, other than the symbols remind me of symbols of I would say, well, medieval era symbols
exactly,
I have seen on Crusader coins.
exactly. Yeah.
It makes me
And,
wonder what this could be.
well, yeah. And as you wonder, as I have for the last 7 years, you begin to arrive at conclusions. Conclusions meaning that you're in the realm of something that says, what else can it be? It can
Mm-hmm.
only be this. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I am with this entire uh, uh, story. Now, let me show you one other thing. Okay?
Yes.
Can you see the stone clearly again?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you see this image here that I'm pointing at?
Yes.
Okay, this appears to be an image of a man standing within a doorway. There's
Mm-hmm.
a little cross above it. This man, with his legs spread apart, appears to be wearing a helmet, a pointed helmet of some kind. On his right hand, he is holding an object. I, I say it is a sword. In the other hand, he's holding another object, straight up and down, that is a lance, a warrior's lance. This is a soldier holding a sword and a lance, standing in a doorway. Now, over time, doing my research, I came across the Kilmartin Church in Scotland. Okay, the Kilmartin Church is famous for many Templar knights who died and are buried there. Initially, when they were buried there, they had elaborate gravestones, slabs, that were carved and laid on the grave, on the ground. Over time, some of those began to become damaged, and the people of the Kilmartin Church decided that they could not leave them out there any longer. So they gathered them up, brought them into the church, and they are currently standing in a room of the church. There are perhaps 10 of them in a line that I took pictures of.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them has this image carved on the face of that stone. And because it's larger, you can now see that it is, in fact, a man standing legs apart with a pointed helmet,
Mm-hmm.
and holding a sword in one hand and holding a lance in the other hand. All of them have this image carved on them
Mm-hmm.
in Scotland in the Kilmartin Church. So how then does that image appear on this stone in northern New Mexico? So you see how these things have developed.
It's a huge mystery.
It is. And initially, everyone, including you, have asked me, well, how did Templar Knights get into the New World at the time that you say they did? And why did they come there? And why do you think they left those stones there? Okay?
Yes, I asked you all those questions, yes.
Those are the big ones, aren't they? And my conclusion, once again, people from the Middle East have been coming here for centuries, probably since the time of King Solomon, the time of Christ, probably. So why couldn't there have been others who came here to this land from the Middle East in that period? I say that these stones were carved elsewhere, brought here, placed there sometime in the period between 1200 AD and 1400 AD, the time of the Vikings. I mean, the time of the Templars, okay?
Mm-hmm. And Vikings too.
And Vikings.
It's still Viking.
And Vikings, because there were Vikings who were Templars.
Yes.
And there were Templars who had been Vikings, and their fathers had been Vikings. Okay. So, to answer the question, it would not have been unusual for Templars to have known about the New World, and that's a whole other story. We talked about it briefly last time. There were maps that were created by a people in ancient history, even before the Phoenicians, even before King Solomon. There were ancient people who used to sail up and down the Atlantic coast. Those people are only known as the sea people.
Right, the sea people. Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that we know them by, except for the fact that they left these maps that they produced
Mm-hmm.
showing coastlines of the Atlantic, uh, showing rivers, mountains, and other features along the borders of the great ocean. And they left those maps. There are key people in Europe who, even today, probably have some originals of those maps, but they are never going to say that. Okay? You and I know that the Grand Master of the Templar Knights in Portugal received some of those maps through whatever his connections were with those old people, those old sea people. He was able to get some of those maps. He showed those maps to Christopher Columbus when Christopher Columbus was planning his trip across the ocean. Christopher Columbus took those maps and showed them to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to justify them sponsoring his trip to the New World. Once they had all sat down and seen that, they said, sure, go for it. You've got the maps right here. We know where you're going. It wasn't a mystery. Of course, history books don't tell us that. History books want us to believe that it was a daring venture and they were sailing off to the edge of the ocean and it was going to fall off the end. Okay? So these maps exist. Who were they drawn by? And how many of these people knew about those maps who came here long before the Templars?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it's no big secret that there was this land, this new world, that there was this place at the end of a gulf, at the end of an inlet, that had a major river running up it, that went to a place in northern New Mexico where the climate and even the latitude of northern New Mexico is the same as the latitude of the Middle East. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, everything they did, all the planning that they did about anything had to do with latitudes and longitudes, mapping, the stars, the constellations, everything played into the creation of maps. Okay? This is the result of some of that. And there's no doubt in my mind, okay, of what I'm saying. I dare anybody to prove me wrong. Show me.
You mentioned that the stone pillars were carved somewhere else and brought to New Mexico.
Yes.
Where do you think the stone pillars came from? The type of stone. Do you know what type of stone it is, and can you guess where approximately it came from?
Yes. I have a very strong uh, uh, reason for thinking that they came from Scotland. Okay. Now, a few years ago, during the time that I was doing all my research, I came across this gentleman from Scotland by the name of Sean Williams. Sean is a master stonemason, master stone carver. His credentials are impeccable. He actually does the work on the Roslin Chapel in Scotland. We contacted each other. I contacted him. I sent him pictures of the stone. I sent him close-ups of the texture of the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the stone, in his opinion, is identical to the limestone that is in Scotland that was used to create the Roslin Chapel and other stone items in Scotland. So it leads me to believe, based on his input and others, that these limestones came from Scotland. They were cut there.
That's just mind-blowing. Can you imagine this happening? A stone pillar fashioned in Scotland, loaded onto a ship, and then taken to North America and carried somehow to New Mexico.
It's amazing.
That's a lot of trouble to go into.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you suppose it might be worth it? Because, as you know and I know, when the King of France decided that he was going to do away with the Templars,
mm-hmm.
They obviously weren't just sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for that to happen. They knew what was coming, the Templars. In Rochelle Harbor in France, they already had 16 ocean-going vessels that they owned that they were going to use to escape France when the time came. When that time came, they did that.
So
Some of
that
them,
was, excuse me, that was in 1307.
exactly, Friday the 13th. When that happened, some of them sailed off to Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
where they were given refuge there.
Mm.
Some of them sailed off across the Atlantic into the Gulf of Mexico, and there is evidence that there were Templar visits on the north coast of South America, in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Panama, places like that. There is evidence there that they were there. Where else may they have gone that we don't know about yet? See?
Well,
Now,
they didn't write anything down, so it's anybody's wild guess what they were capable of.
yes, now there's one major place that we all know about called Oak Island. Okay?
Yes.
Okay? Your backyard.
Yes. I'm quite familiar with it. Yes.
Yes. So, so all of this obviously is waiting for those careful archaeologists and others to finally make decisions on and acknowledge what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows when that's going to happen? Okay. In the meantime, Louis Serna is going to continue with his research, and I feel very comfortable with what I'm doing.
Well, I love the fact that you care enough about history and about these stone pillars, and that you obviously have been searching for answers for many years. And your mind is open, your heart is open. So I think if anybody will figure it out, it must be you. Who else is there to do this?
There's just one problem. Okay.
Okay, what's the problem?
Look up here. I'm 79 years old. Okay. Uh, I just finished another book, and I don't know if there's any more left in me. I don't know. And all I can do is hope that somebody will read my book, somebody with your interest, okay, that can share this story, and hopefully somebody will take it up and move on with it. Now, let me say one more thing, okay, before we run out of time. The symbols that are carved on these stones,
Mm-hmm.
I have said and say that the combination of those symbols on all four sides of two stones are actually a message that is carved in pictures for others who are going to come later.
Mm-hmm.
See the stones, read the message that is there in pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and then know what it is that the stones were intended to tell. Is it treasure? Is it treasure? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But
In our conversation by email, you mentioned a secret Templar code.
yes,
Can
let
you
me,
elaborate on that a little bit?
yes, hang on. Can you see this stone here?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Can you see on this side that there is a Templar cross,
Yes.
capital letter M,
Yes.
capital letter D, only it's backward, and that's only because the camera did a reverse, okay?
Okay. Okay. So it's a mirror image. Okay.
Yes, yes. And another capital letter D, and something else down here.
Mm-hmm.
Next to the capital letter D is the number 17. Next to the letter D here is another number, but I can't make out what it is. When I first saw these, I thought to myself, what are Roman numerals doing on a Templar message? And I thought the D and the M are Roman numerals.
Okay.
But then I started digging into more of the research material that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that the Templars had a cryptic chart to relay messages to each other that nobody else would know about. It was a
Right.
code, and the code is called the Templar DM code. Templar
So
DM code.
it's
And
a
you can look it up on
DM
the internet.
code. It's a
Yes,
DM code, and the letters D and M are on these pillars.
yes, yes. And on that cipher, okay, is a grid with letters and numbers. And as simple as that may sound, you cannot figure out anything unless you know what the code is.
Right. Right.
Now, interesting then, now that the letter D has the number 17 next to it. So
Okay.
what does that mean? What
I
does
don't know.
that mean? The other letter D with another number next to it, what does that mean? Whoever would have come back later and read this message that is on this stone would know exactly what that means. And what answers might it give to them to know where to go, what
Mm-hmm.
to do, and how to recover whatever it is? Listen, why would they come across the world to put this in the mountains of northern New Mexico at a time when there was nobody there? Nobody
Right.
there.
What do you think they were looking for in New Mexico?
Well, I don't think they were looking for anything. I think they were placing something there. Okay,
Okay,
Templar
now you
treasure,
got my interest.
King Solomon's treasure. Uh, that's another fact that is known about history is that his treasure was phenomenally huge. He had so much gold and other uh, valuables that who knows how some of it might be here in northern New Mexico if you just knew how to read the code. Okay? Now, let me say one last thing about this, okay?
Sure.
You see how it is standing there in the ground,
Yes.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, like the other stone, there must be another large portion
Mm-hmm.
below the
Underground.
ground,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Or it would have been toppled over already.
Yes.
What is on the rest of the stone? Okay, number
Mm-hmm.
one. Number two, the top of it is obelisk shaped, like you
Yes.
said. There's a
Yes.
reason for that. There's a reason for that. Uh, Anytime that stone builders create an object like this, they will make the top of it pointed. And that
Yes.
is so that snow and rain doesn't set on top and
Yeah.
seep down into it and cause it to crack
Mm-hmm.
when
That
it
makes sense.
freezes. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So weather slides off of it, but it also may serve another purpose. This stone very clearly faces north.
Okay.
The other sides face east, west, and south. Okay.
Mm.
The height of the stone. This is up in the mountains. There are mountains above it
Mm-hmm.
with a silhouette of those mountains when the sun sets. How is the top of this pillar? How is it oriented to any one of those peaks or valleys?
Mm-hmm.
See?
Mm-hmm.
Also, at that time when this was created, travelers were still using the sky to navigate, the
Yes.
stars, the
Mm-hmm.
constellations, the North Star. How does this orient up into the sky? And is it in line with any particular constellation, which would be a major clue?
I was going to ask you about the star that seems to be carved on that stone pillar.
Yes.
At least it looks like a star to me, right at the
Okay.
top.
Okay, now look. This star
Mm-hmm.
happens to have 8 points on it. Very clearly have 8 points on it. 8 points as in the Templar cross. One,
Yes.
two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8.
The
Okay?
Knights Templar were fond of the number 8. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So do you see all the mystery here?
I do.
Let me tell you, I have spent hours and hours over the last 7 years trying to understand everything that I see on there. And I have come to some very interesting conclusions,
Mm-hmm.
some of which I still have not shared with anybody. Okay. At some point, I'm going to have to divulge uh, the some of the clues that I have discovered that nobody knows about. For instance, for one, nobody ever thought of associating this with the universe, with
Mm-hmm.
the stars. Okay. For that matter, nobody knows anything about this other than myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have people contacted me by on the internet regularly asking me questions about it. And by the questions that they ask me, I can tell that they know absolutely nothing about it. So
Well, that's why they're asking you questions because they hope you have answers.
I guess, and I don't mind sharing. I want this riddle solved, but
Right.
I don't know what it's going to take. Now, when you come to Cimarron, you want to stay at the St. James Hotel.
It
Okay?
sounds like a classy hotel, yes.
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
if they have this stone in the lobby.
Yes.
I must see it.
Here is the entrance to it. Okay? When you walk into what used to be the bar of the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
There are 52 bullet holes in the ceiling of the bar. Okay?
Goodness, what happened there?
At last count,
At
wild
last
men
count.
came there. Guys like Wyatt Earp, Buffalo Bill, uh, Doc Holliday, and on and on and on. Some of
Goodness.
the most famous gunfighters of that time have
They
come
were
in.
at this
They,
hotel.
oh, yes. And they've signed the register. So their signatures are there on the register. Some amazing names. Okay? You got to come to the St. James.
We can have tea or coffee.
No, no, no tea allowed in the St. James. You have to have
No,
beer. You
oh,
have
I
to
have
have
to have
beer.
beer.
Beer or hard whiskey.
Or I don't drink alcohol, so that's gonna be a tough one.
No, there
Can
are
I get
some,
an exemption?
maybe,
Like a glass of milk?
yes. Now, during the early years of Cimarron and the
Mhm.
gold mining that occurred up in the mountains, uh, there used to be a story about a famous lady who was a bartender, a waitress type woman, and she would serve beer or whiskey to the miners. Okay,
Mhm.
but they were required to drop a gold nugget into her slipper as a tip. Okay,
That's a
and
huge tip.
and they claimed that she had a bucket of gold nuggets over the years, but who knows?
Right. So you have mentioned gold mines. Is there a possibility that Templars came to New Mexico in search of precious metals?
Very probable, very possible, but the treasure that they already had in hand. They would not have come here to dig for gold. Okay, they would not have come here for that purpose. They were not miners. They may have they obviously knew mining skills, but they didn't have time to be digging for gold up there.
Hmm.
They came with their treasure, and wherever it is, that's where it is. Now I'll tell you that in the mountains of northern New Mexico, it used to be a very volcanic area,
Hmm.
and there are many natural caves within the cliffs of the
Okay.
mountains. Okay, so who knows? Uh, there's so much to learn and to talk about, and I'm glad to share it with you.
Thank you. I I read your book twice, but I still had a lot of unanswered questions. So it's always nicer to talk to someone in
Oh yeah,
person, face to face, and dig deeper. paper can only contain so much, right?
Yes, yes.
Among the local people, and especially the indigenous people, are there any stories about these standing stones or a group of medieval knights coming to New Mexico?
Okay, now unfortunately, if ever, if ever there had been anything known,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been known by natives of that
Yes.
time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, natives are known for having fabulous oral history. They
Yes.
pass on generation to generation. In that area where the stones are and
Mm-hmm.
were, there is a huge mountain called Wheeler Peak. That is the highest mountain in New Mexico, and it's 13,000 feet high. Huge mountain. On the other side of the mountain is the Taos Pueblo. The Taos Pueblo has been there for at least 1,000 years that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
People have lived in it. Taos Indians have lived in it year after year, generation after generation, until the present. There are people living in it now. I tried several emails, letters to the
Mm-hmm.
governor of the Indian Pueblo, an Indian governor,
Mm-hmm.
asking for permission to speak with him or one of the tribal historians
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about the stone to see what oral history there may be that might be helpful to me in solving this mystery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I assured them that I would give them every bit of credit for whatever discoveries
Absolutely.
we
Yes.
might make.
Yes, for sure.
Are very private
And
about any
I
of their
respect
history.
that. I
Yes,
respect
yes.
that.
And
No,
and I
no.
have to respect it too. See,
Yes, for sure.
so so in my opinion, I will never get any kind of a response from them,
Mm-hmm.
even though even though I know because I'm from there, I live there, I was raised there, I know there. I know that on the other side of that mountain where they live, which is where the stones are, is sacred grounds that the government has given to them because it's sacred to them. A place like Blue Lake, okay?
Mm-hmm.
White people, white people meaning any white people, cannot even set foot in that area where that lake is. There are other places that are sacred to them,
Mm-hmm. Well,
hunting grounds.
if
And
it's sacred, it's sacred. It needs to be respected.
so there is no way that I, and if I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it, nobody can ever make
Mm-hmm.
contact with them regarding that particular
Sure.
story.
What about priests? Let's say Catholic priests or Jesuits. Did you try going to them?
Yeah, yes, and uh, of course, being Spanish, and being very, very familiar with the church and their records, uh, nothing. There is nothing about that. It's almost as if these came out of the sky and dropped in there, and nobody ever saw them. Okay,
They
uh,
don't belong. Mm-hmm.
nobody knows anything from the standpoint of records, anything, newspaper clippings, nothing. Nobody knows anything. I seem to be the only one that does, and uh, like I said, I'm very happy to share what I know with my book and this interview for anybody who can come up with anything.
Mm-hmm. Where can people buy your books?
Okay, one more. Hang on. As you can see, I got a little prepared. Hang on. Here is my website,
Mm-hmm.
if you can read it.
Yes,
And
louisserna.com. Mm-hmm.
yes, and my email address. I welcome
Okay.
anything that anybody might want to send me by way of questions or suggestions or even clues.
Mm-hmm.
My website contains the book that you have and
Mm-hmm.
some of my other books that might prove helpful uh, with regard to this story.
Mm-hmm.
But my books are ebooks, okay? Uh, I'm just a regular old guy sitting in his office in my library here, so I don't have large stock of books.
I
But
understand.
but I have them as ebooks at a very reasonable price,
Mm-hmm.
just so people can read my books. And I highly recommend them. Okay?
Great. Great. So people can visit your website. They can
Yes.
write to you. You don't mind if they send you questions or their
No.
own discoveries.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Some of those emails I get are really something. Okay?
In good way or bad way?
Oh, some people have some very wild imaginations,
Oh,
but that's fine. That's fine. I welcome everything. See, no matter what anybody tells me or what anybody sends me, I
mhm,
always manage to find a little kernel
right.
of interesting information in what everybody sends. They don't even know that they might be sending me a good clue. But
Mhm.
if I do find one, I share it. I'm not selfish.
Are there any other sites in New Mexico that have artifacts or stone carvings that resemble this type of art or these symbols?
There are many petroglyph sites all around New Mexico, but none, underline none, that have anything to do with Templars. Okay?
Hmm.
This seems to be the only case of Templar Knights having visited, left something, and left.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Petroglyphs, ancient Indian carvings, Old Hebrew carvings, yes. Libyan, yes. Uh, Egyptian, yes. Um, in Oklahoma, there is a large site, a place called Heavener, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
There is a
I've
large
heard of
site there.
Heavener, yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
there's a large site there with Egyptian carvings, very clearly being Egyptian carvings all over it. There is so much in New Mexico. Now, years and years ago, when New Mexico became a state, and they gave it the motto or whatever you want to call it, New Mexico is the land of enchantment.
Hmm.
And it certainly is that. It's the land of enchantment because we have so much here, and all it takes is people to come over and start hiking.
If somebody wanted to see the stone that's still out in the mountains, is it accessible?
It is, but I highly recommend that you go through the archaeologist slash ranger for the Carson National Forest. They have jurisdiction in that area, and they do not want people tramping up and down there. They want
I
to
understand.
know anybody that wants to go see it. They will even provide you with help to go see it, but they want to see you leave too, because they
Right.
do not want to find any bodies up there later. Uh, it's a
Or
dangerous area. It's a dangerous area. It's up in the mountains, and you must get permission from the Carson National Forest before you go see it.
hmm
The other one is right there in the hotel.
do you think it will ever be put in a museum?
Uh, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because, like I said earlier, the hotel has changed hands several times. And every time that it changes hands, it goes with the property. It has
Okay.
become it has become part of the property. Okay.
I see. I see.
Now I made a sincere, serious offer to buy it
Mm-hmm.
and to make an enclosure for it that could be left in the hotel at my expense,
Mm-hmm.
just so that it won't get damaged.
Right.
But my offer was not accepted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in New Ross, we had a standing stone with what looks like a cross symbol carved into it, and it was so severely eroded by the elements and just sitting out there exposed, in danger of getting damaged by vandals or whatever. We actually moved it to a museum, and we found a museum that would take it and house it. So right now it's sitting in the Queens County Museum in Liverpool, in Nova Scotia, and anybody can go see it. But it's protected, it's under the roof. It's got security around it, so
maybe someday my wife and I will go to Nova Scotia and visit you and visit the stone.
I'll take you to Oak Island. I think you would really like the lead cross that was found on Oak Island. It's quite small.
I've seen it.
This big.
Yes.
It's amazing because it just looks like this little thing, this small object, but it's another huge mystery. They try to date the metal, the lead that it was made from, and it's medieval. And they even found the region where that lead was mined, and it's in southern France near the town of Rennes-le-Château, which of course is a very old Templar district.
The home of Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, so we have medieval lead from near Rennes-le-Château sitting on Oak Island.
Well, hopefully the boys over on Oak Island will find something soon, okay? I mean, I sympathize with them because they're in the same shoes that I am with my mystery.
Right. It's hard.
They know it's there, but they don't know where,
Well, they already made amazing discoveries. For example, there's a swamp on the island, and they found this paved area just with paved stones, or paved with stones, and they dated it to the 1200s. So again, we're in the medieval era, right?
The time of the Templars.
And Vikings. So
yes,
we'll see how this will pan out. But I'm very excited both about Oak Island and these stone pillars in New Mexico. So I hope that over time we'll get more answers.
We'll see.
We'll see. Well, good luck to you with your research, and I will definitely be interested in reading your next book. Thank you for the one you sent me. It's autographed. And thank you for this beautiful kachina that you made for me.
You're very welcome.
I treasure it. Thank you. Is there anything else that we should tell people, or anything else that you want them to know?
Yeah, basically that's it. And if you want to share the story in your venues, that would be great. And send me a copy of the interview.
I sure will. It's a little long, so I will probably end up editing out some parts. Are you okay with that?
That's fine. And as always, my regards to Tim and Nikki.
I will. Thank you so much, Luis. It was a great pleasure to speak to you.
We'll do it again sometime.
We will. Okay, bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Bye now. Bye.